I used to think forgiveness was a sign of strength, but after the fourth time, the fifth, then the eighth, I started to wonder, am I really forgiving him or just hurting myself all over again? That man, he betrayed me more times than I have fingers. And I stayed. Still opened the door. Still made dinner for two. If it were you, what would you do? Stay or walk away? Want to know what happened? Let me tell you everything. Every crack, every time I forgave him. And the final time I stayed silent. I met Alec on a cold, rainy night when his motorcycle slid out and dragged him nearly 30 feet across the highway. I was the first to receive him in the ER. Back then, I just thought, another accident. But when he looked up at me, there was something in his eyes that hit me. Not pity, but a strange mix of familiarity and fragility. Alec had a dislocated shoulder and a bunch of scrapes. Nothing too serious, but he needed to stay overnight for observation. I checked in on him a few times, monitored his vitals, added a pillow behind his back, adjusted his blanket, and each time we ended up talking a little more. His voice had a low, easy tone. He spoke smoothly, with a natural charm and a quiet wit. But what really made me linger was the soft sadness in the way he talked about himself. A guy who dropped out of college to take care of his father and never went back. A guy who once drove across states just to escape the wreckage of a wrong relationship. There was something about him that made me want to stay in that hospital room a few minutes longer, even when I didn't need to. After he was discharged, Alec left a small note. If you ever see someone who needs coffee at 3 a.m., that's me. I laughed, slipped it into my coat pocket, and actually texted him one sleepy Sunday morning. We started with random, aimless messages. Sometimes I'd tell him about a grumpy old patient. Other times he'd vent about his boring job at the shipping warehouse. Then came the quick meetups. A bowl of noodles late at night, a few slices of pizza eaten in the car, a rushed hug in the rain after my late shift. I didn't realize I was slowly opening up, my apartment and my heart, letting Alec in. He wasn't movie star handsome, but there was a pull to him, open yet guarded, cool enough to make you want to get closer. One night, he sat at the kitchen counter, peeling an apple for me, telling me about the time he almost lost his mom in a house fire. I just stared at him, overwhelmed by a strange feeling, something between tenderness and trust. I was 33, had been through a few lousy relationships. I didn't believe in fairy tales anymore, but I still quietly hoped for someone real. Someone deep. Alec showed up right when I needed something to hold on to. We never officially called each other boyfriend or girlfriend. We were just together. One time he forgot something. I grabbed it for him. When I had a mild fever, he brought medicine and left a note that said, "Get some sleep, nurse." Everything felt light, like mist, like if we handled it gently enough, it wouldn't break. But that lightness started to crack. One night, I was grabbing a sweater from the bedroom when Alec's phone lit up. I didn't mean to look, but my eyes caught just enough to read the words, "Miss you too." And before I could even register what I'd seen, Alec walked over, picked up his phone, swiped the screen, and the message. I stood still, the shirt still in my hand, said nothing. Alec glanced at me, looking a little surprised. "Just an old friend. She's feeling down." I texted her back to be polite. I didn't press, didn't get angry. I just walked over to the bed, sat down, and took a deep breath. He continued, his tone a little softer. "I know how this could look, but it's nothing really." I nodded, not because I believed him, but because I wanted to. That night, Alec stayed. He held me like he always did. But I didn't sleep as soundly as before. The next morning, I made breakfast, set the table, opened the window to let the sunlight in. He walked out of the bathroom and kissed me gently on the forehead, like nothing had changed. And I let things go on like that. I told myself, everyone has a past. Everyone has a few loose ends they haven't fully tied up. I told my best friend. She asked, "Do you trust him?" I laughed. "I'm not sure. But I don't want to doubt him over just one text." But deep down, I knew that was the first time I chose to forgive something that hurt me. Not because it wasn't serious, but because I wanted to hold on to the image of Alec, the gentle, trustworthy man, just a little longer. I used to be decisive, clear, firm. But loving Alec made me softer, more easily swayed, and more forgiving, even when my heart was telling me otherwise. Maybe I thought love meant accepting things. Or maybe I was more afraid of being alone than of getting hurt. Back then, I didn't know. That would be the first of many times I twisted my own trust to make things feel okay. I tried to forget about that text, and for a few weeks, I actually did. Alec was still there on Sunday mornings. Still cooked eggs just right, still grumbled about the morning news, and sometimes cracked jokes when I got cranky after a long shift. Everything seemed back to normal, or at least I was forcing myself to believe it was. But then the gaps started to show, not in his schedule, but in his eyes, in his presence. Alec started having last-minute work on weekend nights. One evening, while we were eating, his phone buzzed. After one quick glance, he got up, grabbed his coat, and said, "I have to go. Something urgent just came up at work." At first, it was once. Then twice, 3 times, 4. Eventually, I got used to eating dinner alone on Saturdays. Got used to staying up late just to hear the sound of the door unlocking or hearing nothing at all. I didn't confront him, didn't call nonstop, didn't flood him with questions. I just kept track, kept a quiet record in my mind. Which nights he was gone, which nights he came home smelling like a perfume I didn't wear, which nights he went silent when I asked something simple like, "How was your day?" One morning, I was cleaning out the closet looking for my coat, and I found a condom tucked in the corner of Alec's travel bag. Small size, not the kind we ever used. It was still sealed. But somehow that made it feel even worse. The fact that it was untouched sent a colder chill through me than if it hadn't been. Alec once told me he hadn't used them in a long time. We stopped using them after 4 months together. Not because he asked, but because I trusted him. I got regular health checkups. We were both clear. There was no reason to doubt anything. Not until that morning. I didn't say a word, didn't confront him. Just quietly closed the suitcase and put it back where it was, like I'd never opened it. That night, I went online and booked the earliest appointment I could for a gynecological exam. It was the first time my hands shook while filling out a form. The results came back completely normal. But my mind wasn't. I can't remember exactly when I started looking at Alec differently. Maybe it was when I watched him sleeping and suddenly wondered, who is he thinking about? Maybe it was when I realized I was staying quiet more often, just because I was scared of the answers I might hear. I waited until Sunday night when Alec seemed the most relaxed to ask, "Do you still keep condoms in your suitcase?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes shifted, like he was scanning his memory. Then he let out a small laugh. "What do you mean? You went through my bag?" I said nothing. Alec sat up straighter, his voice lower now. "Are you accusing me of something? You think I'm sneaking around behind your back?" Still, I stayed silent. No nod, no shake of the head. He kept going, this time, without the softness. "I'm actually offended, Ivy. If you don't trust me, then what's the point of any of this?" I answered with just one sentence. "I asked you one simple question." He sighed and turned away. "I don't remember putting anything in that bag, probably something old. You know I don't use anything with anyone but you." That last line, meant to be reassuring, only made it clearer than ever. It wasn't an answer. It was a shutdown. A way to make me feel guilty for even asking. And the strange thing is, it worked. I didn't bring it up again. Didn't ask any more questions. Once again, I chose to forgive. Or at least, not dig any deeper. Maybe part of me didn't want the full truth. Maybe I believed that if I kept the peace, things could somehow go back to okay. I told myself, I'm the steady one. I won't let a few doubts ruin everything. I used to think that was strength. Looking back now, it might have been the most naive kind of self-comfort I've ever had. I told Mia, my best friend since college. She went quiet for a moment, then asked, "Are you happy?" I smiled, tilted my head. "I'm fine. Alex just a little off lately. Probably stressed out." That answer came out smooth, natural, like I'd rehearsed it. And honestly, I had. I'd practiced that line in my head more times than I could count. I started hiding the things I felt. Not for Alec. For me, because I didn't want anyone to see the cracks spreading inside. I didn't want anyone to see me weak. But deep down, I knew. I wasn't okay. And the scariest part was, I'd gotten used to it. I kept functioning like normal. Smiling with patience, replying to work messages on time. But there was one difference. I stopped talking about Alec. He still came over. Not as often as before, but just enough so things didn't quite count as a breakup. We still slept next to each other, still shared breakfast, but my mind was always bracing for something unclear. But I knew it was coming, and I wouldn't know what to do when it did. I'd started covering the cracks, like putting a Band-Aid over a wound that was already rotting underneath. I don't remember exactly when I installed the tracker on Alex's phone. Maybe it was after the third time he had a last-minute shift and didn't come home all night. Or maybe it was that morning I woke up alone and saw the pillow beside me still perfectly creased. I didn't feel like I was doing anything wrong. When trust falls apart piece by piece, and the other person doesn't bother picking it back up, all I was doing was trying to find what we once had, or at least confirm it was truly gone. It was a Friday. I got off work early, planned to head home first, cook dinner, try to change the mood a little. Alex said he was working late, might be home late. I didn't ask much, just texted, "Be careful." But after I finished setting the table, I picked up my phone and opened the tracking app. A red dot blinked on the screen, parked at some unfamiliar apartment complex, more than 20 minutes from my place. He'd been there for over 4 hours. I stared at the screen for nearly 5 minutes. Not because I was shocked, but because I was torn between staying seated or getting up and driving. In the end, I put on my coat, grabbed my keys, and stopped thinking. The apartment complex was fairly new, clean, quiet. The kind of place young people rent before they settle down. I walked up to the gray door, labeled 312. Raised my hand to knock, then lowered it. Did that a few times. Finally, I knocked. 3 times, just loud enough, just polite enough. A moment later, the door opened. Standing there was a young woman. Soft curls, oversized t-shirt, no makeup. She looked surprised, but not startled. No "who are you?" no awkward fumbling or panic. She just looked at me, and it was like something clicked in her head. She knew. And then Alex stepped out from behind her, holding a can of beer, hair slightly messy, no shoes on. He looked at me, paused for a few seconds, then calmly asked, "What are you doing here?" If it were a friend standing in my place, what would they have said? How would they have handled that moment, seeing this? I genuinely want to know. As for me, I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I was waiting to see. Was there anything else in his eyes? A flicker of guilt, a flash of fear, even a hint of surprise? No, just that same dull, tired silence. Like he'd rehearsed this scene before I ever showed up. The girl glanced at him, then at me, and softly said, "Oh, you're Ivy, right? I thought he said you two broke up." I stood there frozen. My heart was beating, but not fast. My head was full of noise, but my mouth didn't make a sound. She didn't say anything else. Alec didn't explain. No one yelled. No one begged. The silence was almost laughable. I turned around. Didn't wait for more. On the way home, I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just felt cold. A sharp, bitter cold that started at my neck, spread through my chest, and poured into my arms. I walked into the house, locked the door, turned off all the lights, and lay still in the dark. The next day, Alec texted, "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. The day after that, he called. I didn't pick up. By the third day, I heard a knock at the door. Soft, slow, unhurried. I opened it and saw him standing there, eyes swollen, exhausted. He looked like someone who'd just been through a battle, but no one had won. He didn't step inside right away, just stood there, looked at me, and asked, "Will you let me explain?" I said nothing, but I opened the door, walked in first. He followed. Alex sat down on the couch, still wearing his coat, head down. He spoke, his voice rough and low. "I messed up. There's no excuse. I was confused. I don't deserve you." I didn't react. He kept going. "But you're the only person who ever made me feel like I could start over. You made me want to be someone better. I got there too late." I sat across from him, hands resting on my knees, fingers slightly clenched. Still not a word from me. No crying, no shouting, no telling him to leave. Alec looked at me for a long time, waiting, hoping for something, anything. When I stayed silent, he lowered his head and whispered, "I'll go if you want me to, but I don't want to lose you. Not really." I didn't nod. I didn't shake my head. We sat there for a long time, in a room so quiet it felt hollow. Then I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. But instead of showing him out, I simply said, "It's up to you." Alex stepped inside, gently, like he'd never left. 3 days ago, I walked out of a stranger's apartment, the one he was in with someone else. 3 days later, I opened the door and let him back into mine. Same man. Same hands that had touched another body. The only reason I could give myself in that moment was I didn't have the courage to be the one who ends it. I used to believe forgiveness was noble, but when it becomes a habit, what do you call it then? I don't know exactly what made me book that therapy appointment. Maybe it was the way Alec walked into my home like he'd never betrayed me. Maybe it was my own silence after letting him cross that threshold again. Or maybe it was the night I looked in the mirror and saw nothing but empty eyes staring back. At the first session, I didn't cry. I didn't talk about Alec cheating. I didn't complain about being betrayed. I just said, I don't understand why I'm still here. The therapist, a woman in her early 40s with a calm voice that was gentle but not soft, looked at me and said, then that's exactly where we'll start. Once a week, I sat in that small, pale gray room and said out loud the things I used to only dare think. Not about Alec. About me. About the feeling of waiting for the phone to buzz in dead silence. About the way I cleaned the apartment like I could scrub away the unraveling of a life I was no longer in control of. About the fear of losing someone I already knew didn't love me the right way anymore. I started to realize I didn't love Alec anymore, at least not in any healthy sense of the word. I was just clinging to something that once made me believe in love. Like an addict, fully aware that the next hit would hurt, but still chasing it, because the emptiness from the last one was too terrifying to face. I told my therapist, I think I'm addicted to hope. She didn't argue, she just nodded, like I'd finally looked into the mirror and actually seen myself. While I struggled to figure myself out, Alec lived as if nothing had changed. He didn't say much, didn't ask what I was doing, where I was going, but he still ate the meals I cooked, still slept beside me, still kept his clothes in my closet like always. That ease, that effortless comfort, made my skin crawl. Not because he was heartless, but because I realized something. Every time I forgave him, he seemed lighter, and I sank deeper. One rainy night, Alec came home late. The smell of alcohol clung to his coat and his breath. He stumbled in, dropped his keys in the wrong place, and collapsed onto the couch. I didn't greet him, didn't ask questions, just sat still on the bed, the bedroom light dim and quiet. He muttered something under his breath, then called out a woman's name. Not mine. Not a familiar name, not a dream. It slipped out from some deep place inside him, a place I'd never been allowed to enter. I didn't feel angry. Not the pain I thought I would. I just felt empty. Like watching a car crash you know is coming, but still waiting for it to happen exactly the way you imagined. The next morning, Alec didn't remember, or maybe he just pretended not to. He made coffee, asked if I wanted anything to eat. I said no, went to my office, and locked the door behind me. I grabbed an old notebook, started writing down every time I'd forgiven Alec. No long explanations, just notes. Time 1, deleted text. I stayed silent. Time 2, condom. I didn't ask. Time 3, apartment 312. I opened the door for him to come back, and so on. 8 times in total. Maybe more if I counted the times he disappeared without reason. The times he cut me off when I was trying to explain how I felt. I tore those pages out, folded them, burned them in a small metal pot on the balcony. The ashes flickered and blew away, just like the parts of me that once tolerated it all. Alec didn't ask why I did it. Maybe he noticed. But he'd grown so used to my silence, he no longer recognized anything as unusual. I started sleeping alone, without telling him. Just quietly placing my pillow in the office and lying down there every night. Alec didn't come in. We became like 2 roommates renting the same place, no agreements, no conversations. Still, I hadn't left, hadn't packed my things, hadn't deleted photos, hadn't cut ties completely. I knew it wasn't logical, but something inside me, a very deep corner, was still terrified of the emptiness real separation would bring. I wasn't angry at Alec anymore. I had no expectations left, no pain either. I just felt nothing. And sometimes that emptiness was scarier than any kind of hurt. I don't know if what kept me there was love or the fear of loneliness that had settled in like home. I switched to the morning shift, not because I needed to change my schedule, but because I needed fewer nights spent waiting for a door that might never open. The morning shift wore me out more physically, but it cleared my mind. When I got home, It was still daylight. The air felt alive, and I had enough time to live like a normal person, even if only on the surface. I stopped journaling, lost interest in tracking every detail of my life. But I started carrying a small notebook, no dates inside, just questions. Why am I still here? If I disappeared, would Alec notice? Am I just waiting for something worse to happen so I have an excuse to leave? No one answered. But writing those questions down made it easier to breathe. Alec still lived in the house, with me, but we weren't living together anymore. No more questions like, how was your day? No more breakfast made by him, no more apologies. And I didn't ask for anything either. We were like two shadows sharing the same roof. Except sometimes I wasn't sure if Alec was even really alive anymore. One night I left without telling him. I just needed to walk. No destination. I slipped on my shoes, grabbed my coat, and stepped outside just as the sky turned fully dark. I walked until the streetlights changed color 3 times. Grabbed a quick sandwich, then sat down on a park bench, the same spot where Alec had taken me on our first date. When I got back, he was sitting on the couch, staring at the turned-off TV. Hearing the door open, he turned around. For the first time in a long time, he asked, "Where were you?" I slipped off my shoes, took off my coat, and smiled softly. "Did you ever ask that in the past 2 years?" Alex said nothing, and I didn't wait for an answer. That night, I grabbed a small suitcase. Not to leave, just to clear some space. I folded clothes, packed little things into mesh bags, took out a few books I'd read a dozen times. No noise, no soundtrack, no goodbyes. Alex stood in the doorway for a moment, then turned away. No questions, no stopping me. I didn't explain either. That night, I didn't sleep. And Alec? I saw him still sitting on the living room chair until morning, saying nothing, not stepping into the bedroom, just sitting there, bathed in the soft darkness of the turned-off screen. Early that morning, I looked at myself in the mirror. For the first time in a long time, I saw eyes that weren't empty anymore. I don't know if I've moved on yet. I don't even know if this can be called an ending. I'm still here. Alec's still here. But something has changed. Maybe it's me. Honestly, sometimes I don't even understand myself. How I could have put up with someone like that for so long. Has anyone ever been where I am? If so, could you give me some advice? Or if you're honest enough, tell me straight. What kind of person am I? I really need to hear from all of you. Thank you for listening to my story all the way through, and don't forget to support me by hitting that subscribe button.